a lot of people that prefer to use SI will like things to stay the same day after day. They like to go to the same places at the same time. They like to go on vacation to the same spot. You know, that it's the type of person who is saying, you know, I've gone on vacation to this campground every year for the last 20 years. Or I go back here every 6 months because it's where I went when I was a kid and I was happy here. And if I go back there again, it'll be good again. This can show up in a lot of people in different ways, you know, but what I'm getting at is I think that's one of the core points of SI is that it's about repeatable experiences or repeatable sensations. It's if I do this again, I know that it will feel good or that it will work well for everyone, including themselves. Where someone with SE, like myself, being an ISTP, would like variety more. You know, like my mom was always a bit baffled long before we ever knew anything about the psychological type concept at why I would like to try new things that she would be reluctant to try. Or why I would feel more comfortable being much more aggressive with experimenting with something than she was. I've known a lot of other SJ types and a lot of NTPs and NFPs as well that use SI. You know, it's like as much as ENFPs and INFPs and ENTPs and INTPs like to act all the time like they are not really creatures of habit. In a lot of ways they are. They're just kind of, I don't want to say blind to it, but I think they're not really aware sometimes of how much they actually like consistency in their lives, or how much they can get attached to the past. You know, I have a good buddy who's an ESTJ, and he does a lot of things the same way that he's always done them. You know, that's his kind of go-to answer when he will talk to me about doing something. So he'll be like, well, I kind of want to do it the way I've always done it because I know it works. And that's not a bad thing. One of the things that I've grown to appreciate about people that use SI over my life, you know, I'm in my 40s, is that this concept of doing it the way that they did it before, in a lot of cases, is perfectly fine. You know, our society's become so focused on change for the sake of change in the 21st century that sometimes it seems like people are just changing things because they can. And it often, to me, as I get older, makes me realize that I'm just learning a new way to do something that's the same thing again. It's a different way to do the same thing. You know? If you redesign a television, how many times can you redesign a television? Because you make the menu completely different in the new TV than the old TV, and you have to learn how to navigate all of the little nuances of the new menu. Is it really a better TV? Is it really going to show, my copy of some DVD or Blu-ray that much better because I have to learn a new system? No, not really. The screen resolution is about the only thing that really matters. I've owned a lot of TVs in my life, and every single one of them is different. Yet they do the exact same thing. There's a bunch of things like that in life that I've learned over my time here that have made me realize that the the SI concept of consistency is not a bad thing at all. There are certain things that suck that need to be changed. It's like if you use something that is complete junk, yeah, that needs to be changed. That needs an intuitive person to sit there and go, I can figure out how to make a better mousetrap than this. But when something works fine, there's no reason to change. It's like when everybody's dealt with this. You find an article of clothing that actually fits you, and then they stop making it. Or you find a tool or a kitchen appliance that really works really well, and then they redesign it, and you can't buy another one like it. We've all faced this. I don't think you need me to give you a whole bunch of really deep examples on this and take up a whole bunch more time. But I think one of the big things that is misunderstood about the introverted sensing function is what I was telling you, and that is that intuitive people that use it seem very unaware of how big a part of their lives it is. I'll give you a couple examples that are pretty significant. If you talk to ENFPs and INFPs, they will talk to you at great length about their depth of emotion through introverted feeling. They will say, I'm a really feel things very deeply. And they will give you a long list of words that describe the nuances of their deep feelings that they have. From what I've seen, because I've known a bunch of NFPs in my life, and I've had multi-year relationships with several INFPs. When they're talking about these deep feelings that they have, like deep in their body, particularly INFPs, when they get really into describing that, they're describing a connection between their introverted sensing and their FI. Because FI really makes your choices. In order for you to actually feel anything, you feel it in your body. Like a lot of INFPs that I've known, and the ones that I've had deep relationships with, will talk about how they feel things kind of deep in their gut. And they'll very often use explicit language to describe feeling gutted by a situation. And they'll also talk quite often about nostalgia for specific sensation-based feelings. What I'm really trying to say is that in order for you to feel anything at all, you feel it in your body, because feelings are a bodily sensation. A lot of people act like all of this is part of our mind and that it doesn't really connect. I say that better. A lot of people seem to act like the psychological type concept is all something that goes on in your head and that it's not really connected to the rest of your body. And they're kind of missing the fact that you are your body whether you want to be or not. In other words, it's not that there isn't this concept of separateness where you're not living in your body. Your mind doesn't function solely on its own without its connection to your nervous system and your body. The mind doesn't just float up in your head disconnected from the body. It's physically connected to every single part of you through your nervous system and your blood network and everything else. And I think that's a big piece of where that concept of deep feelings comes from. Which I think is a little bit of why when you talk to an ESFP or an ISFP about FI, they will explain it a little differently. Every NTP that I've ever talked with, and I've known several of them for years very well, including my father who was an ENTP, we'll talk constantly about crazy ideas, visions for the future, debates. It's kind of like but it seems in their own lives, they're always anchored to the past in some way. They'll talk about the past. Like my dad talked about the past every day of his life. It used to drive me nuts. It would drive me nuts. Because I don't really like sitting and talking about the past unless it's fun or funny. I can tell stories about things that I've done. And that's usually what it is I'll tell a story. But it has to be fun or funny. Or at least amusing. My dad would sit and talk about things that he was upset about the past, where he felt like he had got screwed over. That's a common theme with ENTPs, is that they kind of walk around with a little cloud over their head because they get screwed over in life by somebody or something. And then they talk about it for the rest of their life. Just over and over and over again, they'll talk about it. I had an INTP close friend for a few years, and he would sit and talk about getting screwed over in this part of his career just over and over and over and over again. And it just kind of baffled me because I was like, well, let's move forward from here. And that's my NI third function contrasting with someone's SI third or fourth. So I think I've kind of covered a lot of interesting points on it, and I think at that point you can pretty much see how it's different. To give you some direct comparisons, SI is essentially what worked before, and NI in an exact opposite to it, because they are polar opposite functions. SI is kind of like, this worked before, I want to do it again. NI is kind of like, I think this is where this is going to go, or how this is going to turn out. If we take this off-ramp, it'll give us a shortcut. We don't have to follow the steps. And it's much more about consistency than it is about the present moment. It's much more about the past than it is about the future. And it's much more about the internal sensations in your body than the external sensations. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up.